Hey, I'm Danielle, a techie serial entrepreneur.
I'm Cicely, a health tech nurse.
I'm Priscilla, and I'm an award-winning creative.
Welcome to the More Than Graphics podcast, a virtual safe space for women and minorities in the tech and creative industries. Together, we're that tribe. Hello, and welcome to Season 8 of the More Than Graphics podcast. If you are returning, hey there. If you're new, welcome to MTG. It's a virtual safe space for women and minorities in the tech and creative industries. Hey, I'm Danielle, your techie retro pixel sorceress and fractional CMO who's always pushing marketing and creative tech for minority brands and entrepreneurs.
And I'm Priscilla, a creative who mixes old school wisdom with modern inspiration and helps others find gratitude in a world full of screens.
All right. In today's rapidly changing world, the word alignment isn't just a buzzword, it's a survival tactic. For creatives, techies, and healthcare leaders, we are constantly standing on a threshold, that thin, vibrating line between where we've been and the version of ourselves that we haven't met yet. And the data kind of tells us that this threshold is getting crowded. To kind of move it across effectively, we have to look at it from the landscape of it all. So recently, the World Economic Forum predicts that by 2026, over half of the global workforce will need significant reskilling isn't just changing jobs, but reinventing our identities. And in the branding world, consistency is king, right? Research shows that maintaining a consistent brand voice across that threshold can increase revenue by up to 20%. So it's all about staying true to your story, even as the platform changes. Priscilla, that's you.
Sorry. So consistency, I think, is important, but for me, it's emotional consistency. I know it's the story feels like it's the same soul, but even if the platform changes.
Okay, so we just
Yeah.
know that we can't really cross
Right.
these lines alone, right? We need a chosen tribe to help us kind of navigate the unknown, which kind of leads us directly into today's topic of threshold. Priscilla, what are your initial thoughts on the idea of threshold? I think we kind of got an
Yeah.
idea a little bit when we're kind of doing our intro for season 8 altogether.
Well, for threshold, for me, it's more of that pause, like
Mm.
right before you cross it, like you're right there and you're just kind of like, well, what are you stepping into and what are you leaving behind?
Yeah, I love that. It's kind of the crossroads moment, right? Like you don't
Yeah,
know
it is. It
to go
is.
forward, backward, left or right, but you're there and you're just
Right.
kind of figuring it out as you go along. So I love that we have an expert today, our wonderful guest who is going to help us kind of maybe even walk through some thresholds for ourselves as we talk about this theme. So Priscilla, do you want to introduce or you want me to do it?
Do it.
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay.
I'll do it.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay, so Tyrone Russell is a fabulous filmmaker and storyteller with a background in narrative and documentary work. He spent nearly a decade in New Zealand directing short films, shaping docs, and collaborating on projects that center overlooked communities and global perspectives. His work often explores themes of identity, belonging, and transformation with a bent towards joy and a touch of absurd. So Tyrone is drawn to stories that challenge expectations, not through politics, but through perspective, reframing the ordinary, spotlighting the unseen, and finding humor or humanity in unexpected places. And since returning to Columbus, Ohio, he has been focused on building collaborative story first projects that stretch format and play with tone. Whether it's digital shorts, live storytelling, or community rooted docs, Tyrone is most at home where cinematic craft meets curiosity. Amen to that.
Welcome, Tyrone.
Wow, that's a great bio. I need to give a raise to whoever wrote that. Wait, it was me.
It was me.
And this is where we're going in 2026. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we got lots of questions to ask you, Tyra, because
Fire away.
we are super excited about this idea of threshold and your perspective that could really kind of open some hearts, ears, minds in whatever places that our listeners are listening from. So, Priscilla, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Hey, so Tyrone, how do you define threshold? Threshold.
Threshold. Interesting. To me, threshold is sort of that moment where something has to change. And it's wait, it's not really that moment. It's that place where something has to change because something might need to change. You might need to do something a little bit different, but you never cross that threshold. But you know where that line is. So it's the line in the sand.
Been
How about
there. Yeah, been there.
this is where we are in
Yeah.
2026.
When was the last time you came on a threshold?
They show up all the time. There have been some fairly major ones. The most recent major was I've been a yoga instructor for since 2004. So yeah, that's a minute. And I was teaching yoga in New Zealand, which is how I initially got to get over there and stay and get my work visa. So while I was working in the industry, I was also teaching yoga, and the yoga instructor had been my identity. But I was teaching hot yoga, and the older I got, the less the heat worked for me. So there was this threshold where I'd leave class and think, oh my God, I do not feel good. But what do? I have been I am a yoga instructor, right? So that's my identity. And that threshold is, well, now you got to do something else. And crossing that threshold into, well, I am a filmmaker. I really need to become a filmmaker and own that. So that was my threshold, moving from one identity to another and owning the new space.
Ooh, I love this. And so many people can relate to this, especially in these areas of tech, because we shift a lot, right? We pivot a lot, and even more so in the creative spaces where we're juggling logos and branding one day, and in filmmaking and commercialing and all the things the next, right? We're running a lot of different mediums at one time. In what ways did you like had to grow up or out of something, and what did it teach you?
When I started my own company doing strategic digital storytelling, right? It was one of those another threshold where once I got into that space, I had to I had to grow up and own the space. And for me, growing up was much more not linear time, but much more internal growth, right? So growing up meant, listen, bruh, um, you gotta find a way to get past imposter syndrome. You've gotta you've gotta learn that you actually know what you're doing and what I do has worth and value. And that's the sort of growing up that was hard won. I'm not gonna lie, right? It was real hard. And I think a lot of us as creatives, I watch us struggle. Oh, how much do I charge? Oh, that's too much. Oh, And I'm like, bruh, you gotta grow up because this is how much it costs. And this is not even what it's cost. This is the value. I grew up into a a business adult who knows the value of what I've got.
I love that mindset, and it's hard for so many of us because when we're taught something, in the early stages of something, it's hard to break some of those habits to be able to pivot or transform to the places that we want to go. So I really commend that you say that very boldly because so many people are kind of I want to do that, but I'm going to say it in my closet and not in front of anybody. I'm not even gonna say it in front of the mirror because I don't necessarily want it to be true, but I want it to be true, right? Like,
Right.
I totally relate to that. There's so many moments too where I feel like a lot of people who are in the tech and creative spaces, they have that I wanna say they have that impromptu or the gumption to start, but then we are sometimes the worst procrastinators. We have really good intentions.
Both went like this.
I feel both seen and attacked.
Same,
Oh my gosh,
bruh.
in my hand. I'm so guilty. I have the best intentions of starting things and I have the worst intentions on finishing them. And I'm constantly putting myself in practice, very similar to what you have explained about how we have to kind of grow up and out. And that really kind of determines how far and how intentional we are about
Mhm.
being in the space that we're currently in. So I really appreciate you saying that. That was great
Thank
wisdom.
So what would you say, Tyrone, is like some okay, so like if somebody's in that same space, right? What would you give like what kind of besides saying put on the big girl panties or big boy panties, whatever. Well, big boys under briefs, boxers, whatever. Would you
Underoos.
what kind of, or commando, what kind of encouragement would you tell them? Like they're there. Well, besides putting that on, what does that look like?
Well, okay. So because I taught yoga for so long, I've got this little inner hippie in me, right? And so energetically, there's a responsibility, I believe, especially for those of us who are of color in spaces that are traditionally not filled with us and sometimes not all that welcoming. So that is so you do have to own your space. And not you. Let me speak from my perspective. I have to own my space. I have to go in and 10 toes down. This is the way it is. Otherwise, I f- I have found myself very deliberately sort of pushed to the side. But also there's a responsibility I think for me that when I am in that space, it's important that I be in that space because if I'm not there, people behind me don't even know that being in that space is a possibility. It's an option. So I gotta be there so that somebody else knows it's okay to be there.
Heck yeah, hashtag representation matters. I feel like that's the answer.
Well, I like how you said it because it felt very warm. Like you're not coming from a, I don't want to say hostile place, but it's like not a, it's just, yeah, I feel like that would be, you should own it, right?
When I'm a yoga teacher, right? And when a lot of the spaces I've been in have, again, I'm a different face. And let me also be clear that I am not small and I'm not flexible. And at this point, I am not young. And so I was teaching at the studio, and the owner had come to me after I'd been there for a year or more. And she goes, since you've been here, the student population changed. They got older, there were more men, and there were more people of color and of age because I'm not this skinny little white woman. And so, you know, that kind of space is not often welcoming to us. So just by being there, people and being on the website, and not as a token, but as an instructor, people are like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to be there.
Dead on. I feel like gives us the permission to do the things that we feel like we can do, not the things we wanna do, not just things we can do, right?
Right. Right.
I really love that. Again, I love the visibility. That's so incredibly important, even for us in these tech spaces as we are, represented by the 2%, us black and brown, collectively 15% in the world. We are magical unicorns in a lot of areas, but I like it that way, sorta.
Oh, every gift has a sting.
That's right. I love that. Yes, absolutely. So I feel like it's encouraging, and I love the fact that you use the example of being on the website, like being visibly seen in this space as a person of stature, right? And not just, well, not to say lesser down, but further down the line, right? I think that's incredibly important to paint that picture and to hold that up so that other people do feel that they have the ability to cross that threshold, right? We'll keep using that all episode long. Uh, let's see. What do you do for self-care? I'm just curious. Okay, it can't be yoga.
Uh, uh, you know, I've started journaling. I have a gratitude journal, and because that inner hippie in me, and the more I started doing it, the more I'm like, oh my god, this is great. So that self care is focusing on the positive. Where do I want to go? Sometimes it's like staring into the skid, but I'm still looking forward.
Okay, for those who don't know what staring into skin looks like.
Oh, that's right. Not everybody has lived in a snowbound city, right? If you start to lose traction in your car, you got to look at where you want to go and steer into the skid.
Perfect illustration, thank you. For the rest of us who are in Snowmageddon or are approaching
Yeah.
Snowmageddon right now, we totally get it. I think it's incredibly important that you share these stories. And I think it's incredibly important that other people like us get to hear and experience your stories because your truth is empowerment for somebody else. And that was really the premise of this podcast was to create more empowerment, educational resources so that people feel inspired and empowered to step up and out in a lot of areas. And the beginning of this year is all about new beginnings, new year. Well, we have the Lunar New Year. It's the year of the fire horse. I am so excited. That is my as a centaur spirit animal. Like this is really touching me in all the areas. So I really love the fact that as we are moving forward, also kind of stargazing, casting our own stars throughout the rest of this year, starting now with this idea and concept of being on the threshold of something else, something bigger, maybe something greater.
And, last year was the year of the snake. And one of the things about snakes and other animals that shed their skin, they shed their skin because they have outgrown it. And so, I have shed a lot of stuff from last year. And what we also forget, it's like, oh, I've outgrown the old me. But when an animal is at its most vulnerable, is right after it shed its skin because it hasn't grown any of the new armor. It hasn't toughened up yet. So, that new growth can often be a little bit tender.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Priscilla, you picked the right one, like always.
It's a gift. It's a gift. I wanted to talk a little bit about this creative purgatory.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, like, there's the messy middle in filmmaking, right? The part where the idea is not shiny anymore, and then the story feels a little bit lost. So, when you're in that space, how do you know if you're supposed to push through that discomfort, or if you listen to when the story starts whispering that it wants something else? That's kind of along with your shedding.
Yeah, you really do have to just get a little bit still and also out of your way. You I have to get out of the way of the story. So it's not necessarily where I think it should go because this was my plan. This is the story I think I need to tell. It's okay, so this is where I am now. This is where the story is now. Where can it go from here? And whether it's filmmaking or I'm helping clients with their stories, you know, it is about be quiet and where does this need to go? And also, who is this story for? Because I'm gonna tell you straight up, I have got some great stories from spring break, and some of them I will tell to my mother, and some of them I will tell to my friends. And it could be the exact same situations, but those stories are different. And so it's crafted for who I'm talking to. What room am I in?
I want to know both versions because I'd love to see how they do it.
Yeah, that's it. You're welcome,
Right,
or I'm sorry.
well, it's like the Alice in Wonderland, right? You got different versions that they tell that we read, and it's like basically it's all still the same. It's just a little bit more flourishment or deflourishment.
I personally am okay. So I ain't gonna lie. Like I'm with you on that because there are stories we don't, Mama don't need to know, right? Like that. What stays in Vegas? Um, and I am also the person like I want to be also to be able to share some of those stories because whether mom is around or not, because I want to be able to pass on the truths from that experience, and that is more important than whose ears it falls upon. So I love the fact that you really center the idea of my truth is my truth. And a lot of people right now in the new year, they're still trying to figure some of that truth out right now. With everything happening in our political climate, in our economy, all the things, we're still trying to figure out in a lot of areas what truths to sit upon and how to move forward in that truth for themselves. And so that kind of brings me back to the whole decade in New Zealand because I kind of want to know more about how you shifted your physical location, how the shifting of your physical location changed your internal creative threshold. Because as you mentioned before, you went in as a yoga instructor, right? But you're walking out something much different, right? So I just kind of want to know like what were some of those signs? Obviously, you mentioned one, like, I can't be doing these stones no more. Like, and I'm with you. I can't do the stones no more either. Like, it's too much. But I love the fact that you were already kind of making up those, signaling those signs in your mind. that I need to pivot. So, what were some of those for you in this particular space
Oh.
that kind of changed your internal creative threshold, going from that yoga instructor to now wanting
Mm.
to do something different?
A big part of it, honestly, was the fact that I had changed physical location. And so it was a fresh start. Didn't nobody know anything about me. They didn't know what part of town I lived in. So I didn't have to deal with, oh, you came from that side of town, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
In fact, they didn't even know where Ohio was, let alone Columbus. I'd have to say somewhere halfway between New York and Chicago.
There you
They're
go.
like, "Okay, fine." And so some of it was getting to reinvent myself and be who I wanted to be at that time, right? Because nobody was gonna question me. They're like, "Okay, I guess this is who you've always been." Little did they know, this is new.
I can relate to that too. I feel like, and I think I've told you this too, Priscilla, like a story where I was literally like fresh out of the box in college, right? I'm young, I'm 17, I'm trying to figure out, where my classes are, et cetera, et cetera. And, people wanted to know who I was. And I think there was a handful of times where I literally told people like the opposite of everything that I was just because I wanted to explore something new. There was nobody else to tell me no. Why couldn't I be whomever? There was one point where I really thought I was gonna change my name to Victoria, and I'm glad I didn't, but it was but it was one of those situations I totally relate to that. You're in a different place, the settings, the, expectations, right, are shifting, they're different, they're not the same, they're based upon closer to what you want versus what maybe society and the other places were telling you or wanting you to be. So I really relate to that, and I feel like a lot of our listeners can relate to that as well. Maybe that's a shift between shedding skins between being at work and being at home. Maybe that's being around certain groups or areas of life versus not. Um, there's just a lot of variables that go with that, but I was really curious to hear yours as to what those variables were. So it really was like location, new place, new state, all the things.
Yeah, everything. It was
It's like all those movies, right? Like what, in Mean Girls? She came from Africa, where she was and then she came to you can build a whole entire new identity, right? So, okay, so like joy and a little weirdness, right? They can make tough truths easier to talk about. And, but weirdness can also be a way to hide surprise. But when you're telling stories about identity or belonging, how do you know when the weirdness is helping people connect and when is it just keeping you safe?
I don't think those things are mutually exclusive because it's okay to keep yourself safe. It's that balance. I'm
Yeah.
telling stories, I'm helping people tell stories, but they don't have to know everything. And it's probably not helpful if they know everything. Don't nobody want to hear all that? The weirdness for me is much more about being true to myself and sometimes I find it's sort of a litmus test, right? Imma say this weird thing that I think is wildly funny. And if you think it's funny too, you're my people. And if you don't think it's funny at all, then no, we're not meant for each other. You're not my people, and that's okay.
That in
I
so
get
many
it.
conversations, Daniel, he'll try to get me and I just keep going. It doesn't matter. He goes, then he says, I know you're my people.
I
We're in
love
the
it.
right place.
This is great advice. Like for all the blurs and the nerds out there, we are so guilty of this. We will say one Star Trek line and try to figure out who our people are. So I mean, yeah, right? So I mean,
Make
I
it
feel like
so.
right, exactly. So I very much relate to that. I feel like it's almost like they're not mutually exclusive. It's almost like a safety layer to kind of figure out, what's what in the spaces that you're in. But it also is a good feeler for again finding community, identifying who you are, right? Because for some people who don't know who you are and they do think that you're weird, that's great. Maybe that'll encourage them to actually pick up and figure out like what is that phrase from. One of my favorites right now is, we're going to all Stranger Things. So one of the high school AV teachers or science teacher, Mr. Clark, he's one of my favorite characters in the whole series, and he speaks a lot of Elvish. And so it was so interesting to see how the teachers or the adults were talking about something pretty big and evolutionary. I won't spoil it because I don't want to give away spoilers. But as it's happening, he literally picks up the ball and he's like, "Oh, just like this scene in Lord of the Rings," and blah blah blah. And all the kids are like, "Yeah, that's right," and the adults were like, What? Back up a little bit. Lord of the Rings? What? So it was just so interesting to kind of see how people are still using that in everyday language and terminology, finding their spaces by being their authentic selves and determining engaging whether that's a safe space for them. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
All right, so ethics of the unseen. Ooh, I feel like that's like
Mm.
have some, yeah,
Oh.
unsolved mysteries music behind it.
Love it.
Going back to your documentary days, right? As a documentarian, you often spotlight overlooked communities. There is a heavy responsibility in being the person who guides a community across the threshold of being unseen to publicly viewed. How do you navigate the power dynamic of that transition to ensure that you aren't just taking a story, but instead facilitating in a transformation that the community actually owns?
Mm. I think it really starts with respect and curiosity. Um, so we did this short documentary about leisure marching in New Zealand. Now, okay, we'll have anything like that here. The average age, you had to be 50 years old to join it. It was all women, and it was kind of like marching band without the instruments, flag corps without the flags. So it was a lot of precision marching, and they had these plans and X's and O's on board so that everybody knew how they were supposed to walk. So it's like the OSU marching band, right? When they're walking and doing all that stuff. But with ladies who were between 50 and I think the oldest was like 89. And it was the wildest thing. And I just fell in love with this. And I'm like, why is nobody talking about this? So my buddy and I just followed them for a couple of months and got to know this whole thing. And while we were doing it, the head of the team we were following, she came and she said, "Listen, boys," and she was allowed to call us that because she was significantly older, right? she she goes, "Why are you doing this? I don't want to be anybody's joke." And it caught me off guard because I was so in love with it. It didn't even occur to me that when you are from a population that is consistently overlooked or dismissed, that if someone shows interest who's outside of your group, you're like, what are you about? And that was one of the moments that really taught me, because let's be real, women when they hit their 50s, we our society is not really great to okay, a whole different story. That's a story for another day.
I was
But
about to say, I was like, "Oh, Lord, Priscilla's about to wild out on."
so once I sat with that, that's the sort of curiosity and respect. I'm like, right. So from their perspective, why are these young boys like I'm not young, but thanks. Why are you following us? And
Mhm.
so I had to be sure that I make my respect and my curiosity clear so that nobody wants to be the butt of anyone's yeah.
I love that, and I love the fact that, again, we all come from different cultural backgrounds, and so I think it's very interesting that America still puts kind of our 50 plus community even on a shelf, and I personally have disdain for that as I edge closer to that number, but also in general, like, I feel like so many cultures have so much higher respect for our elders and the way that we treat and uphold them, the uphold part. I feel like that is something that America still is, and we're young, we're just going to turn 250 years old, but in a lot of other cultures, right, this is a high mark to be seen in this way. And so I totally relate to that. You being in a completely foreign place for you, thinking this is very normalized, and in their culture, it's come the opposite, right? Like they're almost fearful.
Yeah.
Danielle, you were saying that it was making me think of a corduroy complex, right?
Oh, I love
Right?
that.
You
Yes.
know, Tyrone, I always talk about Corduroy the story. I don't have to read it to you afterwards. I'll give you a bedtime story. Corduroy is a teddy bear, right? It's an old book. Do you remember this, Tyrone? Well, anyway, Corduroy is a teddy bear. Somebody girl wants to come in and buy him, but then her mom says Button is, lost his button, so he gets put back on the shelf. So when she was talking about this shelving, and he's an older toy, not like a as he went up to the shelf and gets stuck there. Tears now.
No.
Oh, this is just like, yeah. But that's what made me think of. Like you're saying, right? And along with what Danielle's saying, like how the elder stuff. So if this is like an older toy, but then again, we all know that retro and stuff always come back.
Come on, Ryan.
Well, what is old is new again.
Right? I love this, and I love the fact that you mentioned that because I feel like we could probably use that also in the way that we kind of talk about topics specifically on this episode, since this is our first episode. I think that would be something to really kind of experiment and talk about on socials because it's so important that we kind of remember, like it didn't start with us. It was several, it was
Mhm.
people upon people
Yeah.
before us, and so it's so interesting as we talk about no new ideas really new anymore, like that kind of feel.
It's totally different they threshold it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This leads really nicely into this whole thing of thought of the return and rediscovery. And there's like something funny about coming home after being gone for a long time. Like I did this when I got divorced, came back to Ohio, which is my home state. So, like how everything is the same, but it's kind of not. And now that you're back, Tyrone,
Mm.
and seeing some familiar like streets through global lens, your fancy global NZ lenses. What's a everyday detail or detail that suddenly feels like, what does it feel like cinematic? And how do you help people who live here already notice the magic of a place that they've seen a million times? And I know the answer to this because I've seen those things. Tell the other people that don't know.
You know what? What's funny is the thing that's really opened my eyes the most has been moving back to take care of my parents. Right now it's just me and dad, and he's 94. And because we have an Alexa in the house, there there is this magic that I find ordinary. But he'll go, "Oh, I can't believe that any song I want." I can get. And he'll pull out these old songs that like I never heard of because it's from like the 1930s or 40s or 50s. And I'm like, wow, Alexa got it. And he'll ask for the weather where all my siblings are. And to get to see the ordinariness as the magic that it actually is, it's a gift, and I think it's teaching me to sort of hold on to that because there's magic in the ordinary. There's magic in the small things. And if if you are able to train yourself to notice the magic in the small things, then you're definitely going to see the magic in the bigger things when they show up. You won't miss.
You're magic, Tyrone. That was like
Oh,
so gonna make me cry or something, like Barbara Walters or something. I love that though. I mean, I do love I appreciate looking at the ordinary things and seeing magic in it, but I always love seeing the magic through like your eyes. If was that a song? I'm thinking of Loverboy.
I know. I was trying to say, it's the
I can
song.
like,
Oh, I love. Okay, that actually leads me to my last couple questions here. What did you want to be growing up, and does it reflect what you do now?
the funny thing is, I talked about moving overseas since I was like 7. I'm gonna live out of the country. I move overseas. And then I did it. And I did have an existential crisis once I got to New Zealand because it's like, what do I do now? I've been chasing this car forever and now I've caught it. I'm the dog that caught the car. What do I do? And yeah, so that's it. You gotta dream something else. It doesn't have to dream bigger, right? Because that's a lot of pressure. But if you've got what you want, then dream differently. I took some courses in a previous life. I was gonna be work in exercise science. And I was taking these courses on like senior care and they said that the thing that happens to seniors is once they get older, you need someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. But when you retire and get older, some of those things disappear. And that's when they struggle. And I realized, well, that's true for all of us. You need someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. And if you don't have those, so dream differently. Find something to do, find someone to love, and find something to look forward to.
Oh, these are so good nuggets. Thank you for saying those words. I think there's so many of us that hold on to, especially in our middle, our mid age years, in our 30s and our 40s, that shifts entirely, right? When we get a little older than that. And so I love the fact that you say that as a grounding tool to remind ourselves to be human first, because we do feel like robots in the middle of it all. We do feel like everything's on automation before automation existed. We were the original automators. I'll go one step further. People of color were the original automators.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important that we remind ourselves to be human first. And that's exactly what you're expressing in kind of outlining the next steps. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of young people who are listening to this probably will be like, oh, I have all that. I'll just wait for the next stage. But as you mentioned, you have to start thinking differently. You have to start dreaming differently. And so, I think it's cool for people to kind of plan ahead, right? I think that's on my personal homework. What do I want to do next? What are the things that I feel like bring me joy? What are the things that I can surround myself with in these next stages of life? So I really, really appreciate that wisdom. I feel like many of our listeners will really resonate with that.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Because I feel like sometimes, I'm just talking out the side of my neck. I'm like, I hope this lands for somebody.
Yes. Well, it's definitely landing with me. Yeah, it right here.
And I think it's beautiful, like, especially with Tyrone being a filmmaker, right? That you can tell a story. I mean, like, I've heard him tell stories, and sometimes, of course, we've we're at that place that sometimes I may have heard the story at the same time. Like how mom told me the same story over and over again. But it doesn't matter. It's like I noticed that you tell a story, but sometimes your stories they're just a little slightly different, but it's as if I've heard it for the first time. Oh gosh, why do I keep I'm so talking so romantical or something. But no, it's like it's no the way that I love seeing things through your lenses, you know. I love the goofy lenses, but you always have something really relatable there. And it's like my Barbara Walters moment. It's always great. It's just great to have you.
You're
Tag
gonna make me
Barbara, girl,
cry.
where man.
What is
Hashtag
going
Barbara Wall.
on?
Threshold.
I love that. Okay, for anyone else who wants to follow you, continue supporting your work, where can listeners go to connect with you?
Instagram, Tyrone wherever. I'm at the age where I'm still on Facebook. But you know what? That's not a dumpster fire for me because I curate my feed. I don't
Mhm.
see any of that madness. It is all shenanigans. If you want short films and shenanigans, or if you want me to help you tell your story and do some marketing, call me. Or we can just go out for coffee. Life is too short.
That's right. I love that. Priscilla, do you have any other questions you want to share?
No, I'm not sharing anymore.
Okay, to wrap up these last little few minutes that we have, I wanted to go straight into our flash guest questionnaire. So we
Oh,
will randomly ask you a question. You tell us the first thing that comes to
okay,
your
when you're
mind.
ready.
It could be as what do we say, PG-13 or rated as you want. It doesn't matter. You say what you say.
Tyrone, wherever.
Right here,
Already
right
know.
here.
I can answer probably half of these for you, but let's
Right.
see.
I
Okay,
hate to call back the movie Sinners, but you invited me into your house. I don't know whose fault it is now.
okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I feel like we should have like a timer. So tell us about a project that went hilariously wrong. Like what happened and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, I don't I don't know that things have gone like hilariously wrong.
What's your secret source of inspiration when you're feeling creatively drained? Where do you go and what do you do to recharge?
Mm. You know what? I'm lucky to have a group of friends who are down for shenanigans. And shenanigans is our word. And
I know.
so I will call them up and say, "Hey, let's do a short film. Let's go just make something." And my buddy Terry, bless her, she is down. There was one time we're doing a short, and it was national, uh, it was called National Cliche Day, National Visual Cliche Day. So I was filming all of these cliches, like she'd walk into the house and lean up against the door and sort of slide down her front door, walk by some tall grass and run her hands through it. And I'm like, okay, so there's this shot I'm thinking of. And she goes, look, just spit it out. Okay, will you stand on my front lawn with your arms up to the sky while my sister shoots you with the hose? With because in the rain, no. And Terry goes, yeah, of course, I brought extra clothes just in case. See,
Wherever, Tyrone, wherever.
shenanigans.
I love that. And I can't wait to be Danielle, I always think about this. Had Tyrone and I been in the days of when I was doing everyday celebrations, I don't know where we would be right now. Talk about shenanigans. Would have been
Yeah.
some mess and
Absolutely.
some stuff. So if you were stranded on a desert island, sometimes I read this as desert island, whichever, and you can only bring 3 tools, like digital or physical, what would they be and why would you bring those 3 things?
Okay, so listen, I'm a big fan of the show Alone, where they drop the people in the Canadian wilderness and like we drop 12 people out here, and whoever's the last one doesn't know they're the last one until the crew shows up to say, "Hey, everyone else dropped out. You made it." And I watch it and I think, "Oh my God, I'm afraid to leave town on a half a tank of gas. I'm not going out to the wilderness, but I can't stop watching it." So, if you're gonna drop me off on this island, right? I would definitely need some sort of fishing line because well, actually, I would need a big net because the net you can use for multiple things, right? You can fish with it, you can untie it, and then you get some rope. Net is the way to go. I'd also need a good knife and oh my God, all my Beyonce albums on a Walkman or iPad or
iPod shuffle.
iPod Shuffle. Exactly. Look, I just upgraded from my Walkman. Yellow, the yellow Walkman. Ah.
That's awesome.
Those never had anybody say anything about a net before. That's really smart because you can make it into an outfit. Like I'll find different things for you to use with that.
See?
See,
Yeah,
scene,
that's the way to
scene.
go.
Okay, so if you could travel back into time and give your younger Tyrone a piece of advice, I'm afraid to ask, but what would it be?
You're okay and it's gonna be all right. If I wish I had known how all right things were going to be. Because no lie, I grew up in Catholic school, one of the few black families in the school, and those old nuns whose order was from Kentucky. Mm, mm, You know, I would have made different choices for me if I were my parents.
Mm,
But you know what? They were doing the best they can with what they had, and they loved us enough to give us a good education. I get it. But I wish someone had told me, "You know what? Don't worry about those old ladies. You're gonna be all right."
that is such good advice. Even like I could give my younger self like yesterday.
Yes.
That is, or even about 5
Like
minutes ago.
like, I was about to say 5 minutes ago. Like, yes.
Be all right.
Yes.
So, what's the most unusual or unexpected place you'd love to create work? Knowing some of the answers to this, I'd love to hear you expand on that.
That's interesting because there really isn't any place where I wouldn't create work.
That you,
I mean, to be fair, I mean, a story, I can tell a good story any place.
I know.
So whether it's a wrestling ring, a restaurant, or a public toilet, let's go.
Which goes back to your telling your younger self, it's all gonna be fine.
It's all gonna be fine.
I ain't done nothing yet. It's all good.
It's all good.
Wherever, Tyrone. Again.
I mean, listen. So here's how my brain works, right? That I was I was in the hospital because I had gotten a little bit ill, and I had passed out because, I was sick, and I hit the little button in the bathroom, and all the nurses, and they're coming in, "Oh," and the doctor the doctor was going, "How long were you out? How long were you out?" And I looked at him and I said, "I don't know. Is Reagan still president?" Because I thought that would be funny, and then the moment I said it, I thought, "Now's not the time." So
Lock him up. Lock him.
right? I'm like, "Oh, Lord, no." So even in the middle of crisis, I'm down with Shenanigans.
I know you are. That makes you one of my favorite loved ones. That's why.
That's the best. I love that. Just put these all into a book or something because that's great. That's classy.
Yeah, thanks.
Danielle.
All right. That was wonderful. This has been so great. I am so glad. And on that note, I meant to come back. I'm going to do a clap back on that because my goal was to enter this ending of conversation with Erica Badu's "You Gotta Call Tyrone."
Call him.
Right? Right? So that was my jam for today. But I really, really, really thank you for your insights. Seriously, this is a breath of fresh air that I feel like a lot of people in these spaces really need. Whether you're in the creative space or in the tech space, if you just getting started in 2026 in a new job, for anyone in this space where they're really on the threshold, the precipice of something else on the other side, whatever that be, I really hope this episode has helped you strengthen your thought process or just encouraged you in the simplest of ways. So, Tyron, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your
Thank
wisdom
you.
today.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Of course. All right, Priscilla, do we have any words for the tribe?
No, just follow him wherever. Don't matter where. Because I know I'll be there.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. Thanks, y'all, for listening. Oh,
See, different lenses, same message.
I love it. I love it, though. Y'all are a hoot. But we want to thank everybody. Thanks for listening to us today. For upcoming live episodes, notifications, and exclusive bonus content, head over to mtgthepodcast.com and join the conversation through our newsletter. So until next time, remember that you are more than your output, you are more than your title, and you are indefinitely more than graphics. We'll catch you next time. This tribe with a vibe needs you. Share MTG on social media, on your lunch break with peers, or send an episode to your techie bestie. This podcast is produced by Octane Design Studios. Catch you next time.